In 2011, Obama does the absolute neocon play of saying, almost out of the blue, by the way, why don't we overthrow Bashar al-Assad, Syria's president? Well, that's a little damn weird. But suddenly you start hearing Assad must go. I was on Morning Joe when that statement by Hillary was made, and Joe Scarborough looked at me and said, Jeff, what do you think? And I said, well, how are they going to do that? That sounds like another pretty stupid idea. And it turned out that was 2011. We've had 13 years of war in Syria, hundreds of thousands dead. Destroyed the country. Of course, destroyed the country. And who's president? Bashar al-Assad. And interestingly, I can tell you, oh, God. Yeah, I can tell you. In 2012, the U.S., there were protests, there were things that were going on in Syria, but the president said, okay, we'll send in the CIA to overthrow the government in Syria. And if anyone is wondering, we do this dozens of times, so don't have any illusion that this is unusual. It is the job, the terms of reference of the CIA to overthrow governments in other countries. I don't approve. I think it leads to war, destruction. It hasn't passed Putin's notice that that's the job of the CIA, so it's another reason he doesn't exactly want the U.S. on his border and so forth. Okay, so we start arming the jihadists, crazy things in Syria. Yeah, I can say it. I'm just thinking because... and the U.S. says Assad must go. So the UN starts a diplomatic process to try to find peace, which is the job of the UN. It's not to implement U.S. regime change. It's to try to find peace. So the UN succeeds in getting all of the parties to agree to a peace agreement, except one, the U.S. So the idea that, you couldn't find peace, you couldn't find all these different factions, in Syria. There was an agreement reached, but there was one obstacle to the agreement. And the obstacle was the U.S. said on the first day of this agreement, Assad must go. And, the response was, why don't you have it a process? There'll be in 2 years an election or 3 years. Don't overthrow the government the first day. We have all this in place. And Obama, well, I don't know if it's Obama, probably Hillary, but whatever, said no. So that's why there was no agreement.
But what was the motive? Like, why would you want to overthrow Bashar al-Assad?
Very strange. I've never heard an absolute intelligent reason for this. Believe me, their idea is, we can do it. Why not? One argument was that the neocons had a list. And this is actually what Wesley Clark, who was, NATO's supreme commander in the end of the 1990s. I know Wesley quite well, and he's also spoken about this. He said the neocons had a list that they were going to clear out in the 2000s, all of the governments aligned with the Soviet Union or with Russia. Now, Russia has a naval base on the Mediterranean.
Yes.
And so Assad is therefore an enemy. Or not an enemy. He doesn't rise to the level of being an enemy. He's someone whose peace you can take off the board and put in your own peace. That's all. So the idea is incredible arrogance. They don't think, honest to God, I don't know, whoever gave that order knew nothing about Syria. That I can guarantee you.
But the downstream effects of that were horrifying.
Well, unbelievable.
We created ISIS, so...
Yeah, but we probably created ISIS pretty directly because we funded jihadists all along the way. That's our story since 1979, actually.
Yes.
So this goes back a long time. They're not clever. They're not honest. They're not transparent. They are arrogant to the hilt, and they don't talk to anybody else, including to us, the American people, including to Congress, including to counterparts in other countries. And it gets you into trouble when you're so flippant and flagrant. Because remember, what was happening in Syria, they did exactly the same thing in Libya. And you look at Libya, they decided to take out Gaddafi. Why? No one really knows.
He was cooperating with us at that point.
No one knows, because some people say Sarkozy knew that Gaddafi had contributed to Sarkozy's campaign, that it was a personal vendetta. There are 100 theories. The fact that there are 100 theories shows that the whole thing was bullshit, to use a technical diplomatic term. You cannot even know right now why. What you know is that they misused a UN Security Council resolution to protect the people of Benghazi to launch a months-long NATO aerial bombardment of Libya until they brought down the government, unleashed war in Africa for the next 13 years until today, which is still roiling all of the countries of the region. They do these things because they can, because it doesn't count. Maybe another theory, which is maybe true. What difference? It's money. It's a business. We're running a business. We're trying weapons. We're doing this. Maybe it's all a success from somebody's point of view that you have all these wars going with this big military machine. I don't know. That is a theory which is not completely dismissible, because what you can't do, Tucker, is look and say, my God, we had a geopolitical reason to do this. This was really part of American security. We really needed to overthrow Assad. We really needed to take out Gaddafi, because if we didn't do that, something else would happen. You cannot even concoct a crazy narrative ex post that explains that. So these are not deeply explicable facts.